Hey guys, Bernie here, and welcome to Kerbal Space Program. We're currently in the Vehicle Assembly Building, where we just completed designing a craft for GGD member Adam's challenge, which is basically we have to plant a flag on the moon and bring the craft and crew safely back home. The catch is we can't use any flight assist modules on this mission, so we won't be having any probe body cores, and we also won't be having a pilot. So we drew short straws, and Big Bob Kerman, our scientist, is going to be heading up this mission. Going over the craft very briefly, I basically designed it in three main parts. The first part is the heavy lifting stage, which is designed to take the craft out of the thickest parts of Kerbin's atmosphere and put us on a nice ballistic trajectory. The second part, second stage of the craft is what's responsible for all of our orbital maneuvers. It will be putting us in orbit around Kerbin, it will be providing the fuel to do the transfer burn to the moon, and we'll hopefully have enough fuel to circularize a capture burn around the moon. At which point then the final stage, which is our lander/return craft, that will be actually landing on the moon, and then hopefully we'll have enough fuel, if I plan this out right, to make it back to Kerbin safely with some nice moon rocks. So with that being said, let's move on to the launch pad and see how this goes. Alright, here we are at the launch pad. We're just about ready to go. Got Bob looking as optimistic as he can for such a mission, and basically I'm going to be pretty aggressive with a vertical ascent for the first part of this stage. I want to get through as much of this thick atmosphere as possible, because that's going to be the primary source of friction, which will be our loss of efficiency when it comes to these engines. Also, some of these engines perform much better at higher altitudes, so it's a win-win situation. Alright, and liftoff's good. Looks like we're clearing the launch pad. We have a positive rate of climb. I'm now going to just rotate the craft 90 degrees and point it to the east. Again, since I'm being rather aggressive with the ascent, I'm only going to pitch down about 5 or 6 degrees to start with, at least while we still have all these solid boosters going, because I wanted to translate to mostly a vertical climb. Yep, Bob's looking like he's enjoying himself. He seems to agree with this flight program. We'll see. Okay, so right around now is about a quarter time. The thrusters are going to cut out. I'm going to pitch down about another 5 degrees. Alright, getting ready for solid booster stage cutout and separation. Alright, separation looks good. Now if you notice, we're actually losing surface speed now. That has to do with the fact that the weight of the craft versus the force that's being put out by the engine is actually less than 1. That's a thrust to weight ratio. That's actually going to change very shortly because of two reasons. One, we're losing drag, so we won't have as much friction from the air, and two, we actually are losing mass. So as the mass decreases in craft, the amount of force doesn't change as far as how much thrust the engine's putting out. So our thrust to rate ratio is essentially now 1, and now getting greater and greater than 1. It's never ideal to have a thrust to weight ratio less than 1, at least I can't think of any reason, especially when you're trying to escape the gravity of a planet and the atmosphere, but in this particular design craft, this engine burns fuel a little bit slower than the other engine that I could have used for this same craft. And the idea behind this is that the slow long burn is actually a little bit better efficiency-wise than the fast mainsail burn, which would have always a positive thrust-to-weight ratio. At any rate, we're about 25 kilometers up. I'm going to pitch down to about 50 degrees. This is where my nose is pointed, but this is where my actual velocity vector is going. So when the two are over top each other, then where the craft's pointing is the exact velocity that I'm going. But I actually want this to drop now, probably around 45 degrees. We've only got about 25% left of our main stage fuel, and what I want to do is I want to start achieving some horizontal velocity here to actually get this nice ballistic trajectory going. So if I look at the orbital view map, AP stands for apoapsis, which that's just basically the highest point in my trajectory or my orbit that I'll be going relative to the planet that I'm orbiting. So right now it's around 48, 49 kilometers. I'd like to get that up a little bit higher before this stage cuts out. So if you notice now, I'm pitching up to 60, but my actual velocity vector is around 30, that's fine, that's good. We're still climbing at about 1,000 meters a second. And okay, we switched over to orbital velocity view. Stable orbit, or low Kerbal orbit is, you're talking about around 2,400 meters a second change, so we're about halfway there. Alright, primary systems cut out. Alright, separation of engines complete. We're just going to use the RCS now to separate ourselves. I have not engaged the second stage yet because what I want to do is I actually want to coast up a little bit. We're going to coast out of the atmosphere a little bit and then engage the thruster closer to our apoapsis. This is going to provide an efficiency burn, basically. So since our apoapsis is at 72 right now, I'm just going to add a maneuver node and try to circularize this orbit, or at least plan a circular trajectory. Let's see. Oops. Here we go. Dial it back a little bit. Alright, that gives me a periapsis around 68. That's not ideal. We need to be above 70. Okay, so this looks good as far as a maneuver goes. We've got 1300 delta V to burn. And we're going to basically align to the blue maneuver node and engage our engines. The estimated burn time says about 2 minutes, which is rather long for a single engine burn, especially if you're not doing an interplanetary mission. So I might have screwed something up with the actual launch profile, like the angle I took might have been a little too aggressive, but let's just go with it and see what happens. Part of Kerbal Space Program is making mistakes, and some of the funniest and best moments happen because we make mistakes, so let's just ride it out and see what happens. So again, like right now, like I'm not really trying to achieve any more verticality, so that's why I'm burning just on level with the horizon. Again, we're trying to put a lot of horizontal velocity into our craft right now so that we can essentially just ring around the rosy here. So yeah, let's just see how this goes. Liquid fuel, we've burned through about a quarter of this, and again, this stage here is primarily to do a transfer burn, which I believe is going to be another 700 meters a second, and then a capture burn, which is at least another 300. So we need about 1,000 delta V on top of this 600, so about 1,600 more delta V, which it's doable. That's just a quick off-the-cuff calculation. We'll see what actually happens as I'm like plummeting down and losing altitude. So yeah, Bob is still looking happy about that though, so we'll see what happens. Yeah, I'm actually dipping. I'm below 70 kilometers. 70 kilometers is the atmosphere cutoff here, so anything below 70, and you're talking about friction robbing, your orbit will decay, and you will eventually crash down to Kerbin. So by I'm trying to pitch up more aggressively now and just stop this descent rate, but I think what's going to happen is we're going to be... Yeah, this is too shallow. This isn't going to work, I don't think. But let's keep going with it. Let's see what happens. I'm going to pitch even more aggressively up now at like 50 degrees above the horizon. Yes, that's moving my apoapsis here. And then, alright, we're starting to have a periapsis form. Okay, and here we go. As soon as this hits 70, then I'm going to stop the engines because we're going to have to do another correction burn. So this is good, actually. This is probably salvageable at this point. So right now the periapsis is 51 kilometers and the apoapsis is 73. I want to raise the periapsis, and the best place in an orbit to do that is at the apoapsis. So I'm going to add a maneuver node here, and I'm basically just going to burn forward in my direction. That's going to increase my orbital energy and basically raise my periapsis. So if I do it just right, I can circularize, and we'll get roughly the same apoapsis as periapsis, like right here at 72, 73. That's good enough. And if you look, it's only an 18.6 meter per second correction. So once you've got most of your orbital energy put in, it doesn't take much to change things if you know where to change them. And if you notice too, like my apoapsis is decaying. That's because I'm still below 70 kilometers, which means there's some air resistance, which means there's some friction that's actually stealing some energy from my orbit. So we're going to have to actually adjust that maneuver node as we get closer to it. If I move this here, I can just slide it here, and we will achieve, I believe, yeah, roughly similar effects again. What is my altitude right now? Okay, we're at 65, so we're like 5 kilometers from being friction-free, as it were. And then we can focus on doing this correction burn. So let's see, I'm just going to keep my eye on that. Yeah, I mean, this is not the most ideal launch profile, but I'm just kind of going with it because that's in the spirit of KSP. I mean, yes, you could revert saves, and yes, you could, like, reload it, and we can start from the beginning, but part of the fun of Kerbal Space Program, at least in my experience, is having issues like this where, like, launches didn't go exactly perfectly, and now you have to do some on-the-fly corrections or something, so this could be interesting. I hope we'll have enough fuel to make it back. But again, if not, maybe I'll plan a rescue mission, and that will be a fun little video series in and of itself. But okay, as we're starting to approach at least an altitude that's more reasonable, like as you notice too, like the amount of energy or the amount of delta V that I need changes based on where my maneuver node is. So let's see. Okay, this is still, that's not good, so we're going to have to raise the energy a little bit more. So 70 and 71, that's fine. Okay, we're almost out of the atmosphere now. We just got 2 more kilometers. It's almost negligible effects at this point, since it is like, I believe, an inverse logarithm, as far as like how the force of atmosphere applies to the drag force applies to the craft, at least when it's being calculated. Unless they change that. I'm not sure what the current model was. I know it's similar to, it's a very simple model compared to what like an actual rocket would model, but again, since this is a game, it's a first order approximation. I think in the spirit of it, it's actually a pretty good model, a pretty accurate representation as far as like what you'd really have to consider doing something like this. Because, you know, everyone has a space program in their backyard. But yeah, okay, so we are almost at 70 kilometers. We are 3 minutes from our node. Our burn's only going to take a second, so at this point, since we're almost out of the atmosphere, I'm going to time accelerate a little bit. Okay, we are out of atmosphere now. That's good. So we're totally in the vacuum of space. There's no more friction, which means I can finalize our maneuver node and make sure we've got it where we want it. So let's see here. It's going to be about a 19.5 or 20 meter per second burn, 71. Okay, yes, this will circularize our orbit. It'll cost us 20 meters a second in delta V, which not terrible. That's almost nothing in the grand scheme of things, but I'm a little concerned. We did burn a lot of our primary stage just getting into orbit, so the transfer burn is going to have to be very careful, and I actually might set it up so that we're on a free return trajectory in case like we can't land at all or something worse happens. So let's see here. Let's just move up to this maneuver node and we'll execute the maneuver and then we'll go from there. So let's see, yep, just time accelerating up to the node. We've got 40 seconds, it looks like. 3, 2, 1. Okay, time's back to normal. Just doing a last minute correction, and we're going to burn this really quick. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Burning, and... Okay, 0.6 meter per second correction. Let's see where that got us. Apoapsis is 71, periapsis is 70. That's okay, that's good. That's a stable circular, semicircular orbit. It's within a %, so that's not bad. Okay, I think I'm going to stop the video there, but the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a transfer burn to the moon.